Brannan Chan Redd. Even before he was born, I knew he would look Chinese, just like me. And when I saw him for the first time, he did, except for his blonde eyelashes and eyebrows. Those are definitely from Lee. Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter Redd, and on this episode, I get to tell the story of my son Brannan. As a word of caution to our listeners, this story contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Also, be aware that these birth stories may differ from his or her partners, as these accounts are told from their own perspective through the lens of trauma, heartache, and the passage of time. Please respect our moms and dads who are brave and gracious to share their children with us. So I'm Winter Redd, and I am one of the hosts of this show, Still a Part of Us, with my husband Lee. And today is, when this episode comes out, is going to be our son Brannan's second birthday. And we thought it was time to share his story because we encourage all of our lost moms and dads to share their stories. And so we finally wanted to share this story, his story, with you. A little bit about us. I know that you guys know a little bit about us, but just to kind of expound, as we usually ask our moms and dads, I'm a wife to my husband, Lee. He's wonderful, and I am super lucky to be married to him. We've been married for about 12 years now, and I just count myself so lucky to have met him and to have somebody to go through life with as we have. And I am a mom to Lucy and Brannan, and we'll talk about both of them a little bit later. I am a pharmacist as a profession, and I specifically work in clinical trials. We're based in Utah, and so we've just really enjoyed living this area. I've lived in Utah most of my life. I'm an American-born Chinese, and so if you didn't know that, I am Chinese by heritage, and I'm grateful for that heritage. And so, like I mentioned, we've got Lee in our family, and he is, as you know, well, you might not know because this podcast is extremely somber most of the time, but he is so funny and so lively, and I'm grateful for the joy he brings to our family. And we have our Lucy, and she is one spunky little kid. She was born, she's almost 6. And so we're so grateful for her. What a blessing she's been to us and the joy that she brings to our house. We love to hang out. We like to play together. We like to play games. We like to cook together and bake. And we love hanging out with our family and friends. And I cannot say enough about how amazing our family is. I will mention them later again multiple times in our story, but I cannot say enough about how wonderful our friends are and our family who have supported us throughout all of this. And we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we are actively involved in our church. We're grateful for the support we've received from our church family as well. And like I mentioned, we currently live in Utah, just outside of Salt Lake City, if you're familiar with how Utah is set up. So a little bit about my pregnancy. I've actually had issues getting pregnant every single time we've gotten pregnant. With Lucy, I learned that I don't ovulate. And so I was instructed to take Clomid. And sure enough, I got pregnant the first time. So I was like, sweet, that works out for us. And so we're excited about that. And we did get pregnant while I was on birth control after we had Lucy when she was about, 16 to 18 months. That resulted in a miscarriage, and that was quite devastating to us. But obviously that was not meant to be for whatever reason. So I'll be honest, we were a little gun shy, actually. We were not wanting to try again because that was really hard for us. We didn't realize how hard that would be. Even though it was very early on, we were still very worried and concerned about trying for another one. But eventually we got the courage up to try again. And once again, we had to go for another round of Clomid, and it worked again. The first time around, we really felt like Lucy would benefit from having a sibling. And I have 4 siblings that I love so much, and Lee has 5 siblings, and we are both grateful for that camaraderie, even though at least my siblings and I, we didn't necessarily like each other when we were growing up, but gosh, we sure do like each other now. I'm so grateful for that. And so, yes, I am extremely grateful for that. And we got pregnant in 2017, and it was kind of like a little bit of a push because I was getting close to 40. I think I was 40 that year, and I had turned 40. And so, the clock is ticking, and that actually puts a lot of pressure on you to try again. So thankfully the Clomid worked again the first time around. My pregnancy actually was really quite fine. I didn't have much morning sickness. I actually don't remember much morning sickness at all in that first trimester or throughout. We did genetic testing because I was older, and everything looked good. Everything was in order. There was we weren't high risk for anything that showed up. So that was, once again, really super grateful. We went in for our 20-week ultrasound, and everything looked A-okay. Everything looked good. The only thing that came back, and I actually got quite worried about it, was that there was a report of Brannan only having a single umbilical artery, and that there should be 2 umbilical arteries in one vein. So there should be 3 umbilical vessels of some sort. So it's unusual, but it happens that everything turns out fine sometimes. Because I have grown up, have trained in the science area, I started looking at papers about single umbilical arteries, and I really did start to get a little nervous. And so I asked Lee to give me a blessing, and my father-in-law to give me a blessing to bless our child that he would be okay. And I felt like, okay, we're going to do this. What ended up being something a bit of a scare, having that single umbilical artery, our doctor actually recommended that he basically ordered ultrasounds on a monthly basis from there on out, just to make sure that Brandon was growing appropriately. And what a blessing that was, I guess, even though he had the single umbilical artery, and who knows if that contributed to his death. But I was grateful for all of those times that I got to see him on ultrasound, because I know that a lot of times most people just get their 20-week ultrasound and they call it good. And so I was so, so grateful to see him every single time. There were several ultrasounds that, where he was moving, I could see his mouth opening up and closing, and his tongue sticking out. It was just such a blessing to have those extra ultrasounds throughout my pregnancy. And Lee got to be at all of them except for one, I think. And so he got to see Brandon a lot too. And I'm super grateful for that. The rest of the pregnancy was good. I was tired, of course, but I was also working and being with our family and raising Lucy together with Lee. Brandon was really a mover. He loved to move around, and I loved to feel him move, and Lee loved being able to feel him move also. I found myself, I'm a little bit of an over recorder on things. And so I would record little videos of my belly moving. And that was also a blessing to have for later records. We actually struggled to find a name for Brannan. It was actually 2 days before we found out that he passed away that we finally decided on his name, Brannan Chan Redd. Those are all family names. And so I am so grateful for all of my family because of the legacy that they have given me, and to our little son. And so when we finally found out, when we decided on Brannan Chan Redd, it felt right. It has good rhythm. That's really important to me when it comes to names. So Brannan Chan Redd was his name. The Saturday before we found out that he had passed away, I was actually quite tired. I had packed up from work on Friday, and I remember kind of tidying up my things, almost like it was, I don't know, there was some finality to it. I felt the same way with Lucy because she was born on a Saturday, and I remember packing up my stuff and making sure everything was in order for people to pick up where I left off. So, but I slept all day on Saturday. My back was hurting. I was really tired, and I suspect I was probably having some contractions of some sort, but didn't realize it. Lucy was born C-section, and I didn't have a single contraction with her, so I didn't know what it felt like. So I slept all day, and I didn't do too much. Lee and Lucy kind of went about their business and took care of me, and I got up every so often. On Sunday, July 22nd, 2 years ago, we got ready to attend our church meetings in the morning. And so I was getting myself ready. I was helping Lucy get ready, getting her fed. And we finally get to our meeting. We finally sit down in the quiet chapel. And of course, I'm resting my hand on my belly. That's a common place for it to rest in the stage because I was 37 weeks and 6 days. And I just remember that I had this thought of like, gosh, I haven't felt Brannan move all morning, but I haven't really had a chance to sit down and like sit and think about it. I had not been counting kicks. I did not know that was a thing that I was supposed to be doing in the last trimester. And I now know that is super important and vital for the health of the baby and being alert of how your child is doing. So I encourage people to do that. But I could not remember the last time I had felt him, besides maybe Friday. I had felt him on Friday. I was supposed to get a stress test that day, but I couldn't quite get in for an appointment. And so I was like, okay, I'll just schedule it for Monday whenever I can get in. And I turned to Lee and I kind of whispered to him that I had not felt him for a while. And I was like, gosh, I don't remember if I felt him on Saturday either because I'd been sleeping most of the day. I was tired and he said, okay, I actually I was poking my belly, kind of just moving my belly just to see if I could kind of egg him on because I've done that before. And Lee did the same thing. At one point in time, he actually pushed my belly quite forcefully and there was nothing in response back. So of course I jump on my phone really fast and start reading about no movement at this stage in pregnancy. And some people are like, gosh, there's not sometimes room for the baby to move at this stage. They're just getting bigger. And so I kind of thought maybe it's that. And people suggested, oh, get into a different position, lay on your side, have some sugar or something to kind of wake the baby up or move them. And so Lee ran home really fast and got some juice for me, some cold water or juice. I can't remember. And by that time, our first meeting had come out. So I was kind of just hanging out in the hallway waiting. And I called up to the university because I just, I think we should just check. And sure enough, they said, yeah, why don't you come in? Let's just check it out, make sure everything's okay. So we arranged to have Lucy, Lee's mom, come pick up Lucy after church. And we headed up to the hospital. And I remember tearing up in the hallway while we were waiting to kind of finalize some things. And I was getting nervous, actually. Nervous in a not a good way, like not nervous like excited, but nervous like I'm worried about something. So Lee and I were driving up, and I remember turning to him and asking, everything's going to be okay, right? And I think he said, yeah, I think everything's going to be okay. We get to the hospital and check into the kind of the pregnancy or the labor and delivery, whatever that place is called, labor and delivery triage area. And I think we're the only people there. We get settled into our room. They put, somebody comes in and this girl she's like, oh yeah, let's just see if we can find the baby's heartbeat and make sure everything's okay. And she couldn't find his heartbeat. And as she left the room, I had great fear in my heart, because this woman is trained to find baby heartbeats. That's what she does. And the fact that she couldn't find it there was something wrong. They brought in another nurse and she couldn't find anything. And then they went and got the doctor. I remember Dr. Disney. She was wonderful. But she looked around with the ultrasound, the Doppler, and couldn't find anything. And she said, "I'm so sorry. There's no heartbeat." And I just started sobbing. And as a mom who is facing this now, your first thought is, what did I do wrong? And you feel like you've messed up seriously, and there's no way to make it undone. I had never heard of stillbirth before, but at the back of my mind, I knew there was something wrong if I couldn't find that heartbeat. And I just sobbed. I'm so grateful for the nurses and the doctor, because as I just sobbed with Lee, I remember several hands that were put on my head and on my shoulder and on my feet. All the nursing staff and the doctor had surrounded us and were offering comfort and kindness to us in a very dark time for us. So then they let us have a few minutes, and they said that they'd come back and talk to us about different options. And I remember them leaving, and I said, "Lee, we're going to have to call our family." And Lee had the awful task of calling his parents, calling all of his siblings, calling my siblings, and telling them what had happened. And it was hard. I'm grateful Lee was there to do that, because I was a mess. Lee's parents came up, actually, and they just were with us, and I'm so grateful for that. They had handed Lucy off to one of Lee's sisters so that they could come up with it and be with us, and they hugged us and surrounded us with love and just sat there with us. We didn't say much, but I'm so grateful for their presence and being sad with us, and yeah, so grateful for them. When the doctor came back in, they talked about different options. She talked about different options with us about how we could get induced right now, or if we wanted to wait, we could go home and get a bag. We could do a lot of different things. And so we decided that maybe we should go home and get stuff together and then come back later that evening. It was about, I think, 3 p.m. when all this was happening. And so we got discharged and we headed home, and Lee's parents came down with Lucy, and we told Lucy that we wouldn't be able to bring her little brother home. And when we told her that, and she's 3.5 at the time, she just burst into tears and just cried and cried. And that made me even sadder. Just, she was looking forward to having a sibling, and to be able to tell a little kid who doesn't understand everything that's happening that she won't have a sibling here on earth was just heartbreaking and devastating. I asked Lee and his father for another blessing of comfort before we headed back up to the hospital. Lucy would stay with my in-laws until we were back from the hospital. So we headed back up to the hospital, got checked back in. Of course, they put us in a room far away from other moms that were delivering on the labor and delivery floor. I think, obviously, out of respect for us and what we may be going through, there was a little card on our door, actually, of a leaf, a purple card with a leaf on it. And I think that's the symbol for this child is stillborn. The child that we will be delivering is stillborn as a visual signal of what was happening in the room, and to maybe tread a little lightly on what was happening. So the nursing staff got us checked in. We were grateful for that. I cannot speak highly enough of the labor and delivery department and the women's health department at the University of Utah. That's where we delivered Brannan, and that's where we delivered Lucy. And they always just do such a wonderful job. They're compassionate and kind, and they really made this process, as awful as it was, as best as it could be for us. So we got checked in, and we talked about a few different things. Epidural, are we going to try for vaginal birth? We had Lucy by C-section, and it had been 3.5 years. And so they thought it would not be, it would be fine to try for a vaginal birth. And so we were going to do that, and we had opted to get a epidural, once again, to one less bit of pain to worry about during all this horrible time we were dealing with already. So we got settled in. They said we could settle in. We'd ask for the epidural when the time came, when things started to ramp up. They got me started on some medication to start the induction process around 6:30 in the evening, 6:37 in the evening. And before that happened, we got changed into, oh, no, that's wrong. We actually had family meet us there we told them to come hang out with us and spend some time with us. We had had offered to my siblings if they wanted to come and watch the birth. Originally, this was a plan. Our preference before was that we wanted them to come if they wanted to, invited Lee's parents if they wanted to be in the room when our child was born. And so the offer still stood. Obviously, this is different circumstances, but we wanted them to be with us and as support. And I'm grateful we still had that option open, because, gosh, it would have felt so lonely to be without them. And I remember changing into our kind of some clothes that we were going to sleep in. And I just remember standing there, just the two of us, me and Lee, before everybody had come over. And it was semi-dark in the room, and we just sat there and hugged each other. I was in my gown, and he was in, a soccer jersey, the Icelandic national soccer jersey, and some basketball shorts. And we sat there and hugged each other. And I have this picture of us in my head, and it is so, one of the saddest pictures that I have of us, where we know that this is about to happen, and this day that's supposed to be so happy, the birth of our son, the birth of our child, but it is so sad. Just leaning on each other for support and hope that we can get through it. A really good friend, Jamie, offered to take pictures of the birth. And so we told her we would call her when we were getting close. And we hung out with our families for a little while, and it was getting late. It was approaching 10 or so. And we're like, why don't you guys go to sleep? It might take a while, since this is my first vaginal birth, first induction. Some people said, gosh, it could take 12 to 24 hours. You don't ever know. So we sent them home to go get some sleep. We decided that we should probably take a little nap too and get as much sleep as possible, because we had been just crying and being so sad, and that is so emotionally draining, and we were just exhausted by that time. So we laid down. I had the epidural on board. That was thankfully an easy process. And Didn't hurt. Was grateful that I had those meds on board because it was getting to be uncomfortable. And so we laid down and slept as much as we could. I woke up every so often, and at one point in time, I remember feeling, gosh, I feel like there's some pain that I have on one side, and maybe I just need to shift. And so I called the nurse to help me move around because Lee was sleeping. And it was probably about 1:30 in the morning or so. And the nurse came in and she's like, oh, yeah, let's just check you really quick. And she's like, we can switch you because maybe the epidural needs to, the med needs to get onto the other side where you are feeling a little bit of pain/pressure. And so she checked me and she's like, oh, you're actually ready to go. She's like, let me call the team. And so I basically said, Lee, he was in a deep sleep, and I finally got him up. I was like, Lee, they're ready to go. We need to call people. And so he called his mom, and he called, I think, my sister, and everybody else kind of called everybody else that we were having the baby. And we said, if you want to come up, come on up. So before you know it, they have the whole team in there, and it's almost 2:00 in the morning. And I've never done a vaginal birth before, and I was worried and I was scared, and I didn't know what to expect, hadn't taken a birthing class or anything. And so the nurses were so grateful, they were so great to walk me through it. And they pulled up my legs and told me how to breathe and told me how to push. Lee was holding my leg. And I pushed the first time around as that contraction came down. And that was the first time. And then the second time, Brannan came out. And I was so surprised. I was shocked at how easy it was. And I mean, granted, he didn't have any life in him to fight, I guess, to stay in the womb, I guess. But I was so happy and proud of myself for doing that. I had a VBAC, a vaginal birth after a cesarean, and I was kind of beaming because I had done it. And I remember the doctor was asking Lee if he wanted to cut the umbilical cord, and he just shook his head. He just shook his head. He's like, I can't. He looked scared to do it. It wasn't until later that we talked about it that he told me that he didn't want to be the cause of Brannan's separation from me physically. So they handed Brannan to Lee first. And he held him for a minute. And then put Brannan on my chest because we wanted skin to skin. They had asked us what we wanted to do, and they said, we will do this birth as with the preferences you have as much as we can do it. And I was grateful for that. They were so kind to let us have that opportunity. They kind of cleaned him up a little, and then they put him on my chest, and oh my goodness, he was warm, obviously, from my body, and he was pink, and he just looked good. He was so beautiful, and I was so proud of him. He was perfect. I kept saying, he's perfect, he's perfect, he's beautiful. And I was so grateful to have that time just together. Everybody had left the room so we could have a moment while I was getting stitched up and delivering my placenta and all that other fun stuff. And it was just so beautiful. And we invited everybody back in. By that time, my sister Jules, my brother Isaac, my mother-in-law Kathy, and our good friend Jamie, who was our photographer for Brannan's birth, was there. And it was quiet
it was so quiet and so reverent and so peaceful in that room. Everybody was just happy, but also crying and silent because we were excited for everybody to see Brannan, but knew he wouldn't be able to stay long. It was such a wonderful time and to be with each other. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was just a little sad that Lucy wasn't able to be there. She was obviously sleeping and she needed to do that. And we hoped that she would get to meet her brother, even for just a little bit. And we held him, and Kathy and Lee actually cleaned him up and weighed him. He was so much bigger than Lucy was. Lucy was tiny. And so I'm so grateful that he was healthy in that way. Like, he had put on some weight, and I'm so grateful for that. But everybody got a chance to hold him, and it was so nice to have everybody there, even in the middle of the night. Eventually, we told everybody they should go home and sleep because it was like 3 in the morning, and we were grateful that they could come. And Lee and I just had Brandon in our room. We did get transferred over to in the morning, or really super early in the morning. It's all a blur now. But we got transferred to the women's health floor because they, on labor and delivery, they have protocols for how long you can stay there after the delivery. And so you either get moved to the newborn floor, like after you have a newborn, or else you go to the women's health floor. And we got moved there, and sure enough, our Lee took our purple card with a leaf on it and stuck it on our new door when we got transferred. Got to bring Brandon along with us. And they gave us a cooling pad so that he could be on there, and they told us we could have him for 24 hours. That was their policy, the hospital's policy. And so we got to have him all the next day. And we were so grateful for all the love and compassion we were shown throughout that day. The news traveled quickly amongst our friends and family, and amongst our neighbors and our church congregation. We felt such love. We had so many visits that day. I can say that all of our siblings, except for my oldest sister who lives in another state, got to see Brandon and hold him. While he still looked good, his body obviously was starting to break down a little bit. His skin was getting super fragile. His chin, his chin got damaged, I think. The skin on his chin got damaged when he was being delivered, I think, and because there was a little bit of a sore, and it just kept getting bigger. And for some reason, I think of him fondly with that little sore, because it's a distinct mark on him. It's gonna sound super weird, but he just reminded me of one of those like pharaohs that they always have that little chin situation. I don't know what that thing is called, but he just reminded me of this little Egyptian prince. And so, but I was grateful to have him in our room, and he had the cooling pad. It wasn't a cuddle cot, but it was a cooling pad, and so he felt really good. He was cuddled in his blanket and on that cooling pad. And like I said, so many friends and family and our church leadership came to visit us, and grandparents came and visited us. They got to hold him and see him. And even though we knew that we would have to bury or cremate him at some point in time, we were excited to show everybody to him, and for everyone to see him, because we are proud of our son. He's perfect, and it's a real bummer that he didn't get to stay, but we're grateful that we got that time with him. So, it's funny. I remember at one point in time we had several of Lee's siblings and their spouses in our room. Just they all kind of happened to come at the same time, and it was so comforting to hear them talking and laughing and reflecting on when they were kids. And I know that Lee has expressed some guilt at laughing and being jovial at that time, but um it was a nice relief to have something normal and um something fun to reflect on at that time. We also saw our doctor. He was not able to be at the birth, but you could tell he did a lot of digging into the reports and to see if he could figure out what happened to Brannan. And throughout all of this, we saw a social worker, and she gave us a big packet of stuff with loads of paperwork of what we needed to do. We needed to decide on burial. We needed to decide on cremation. Here are some grief counseling services. There was just so much paperwork. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And I didn't want to deal with it. So Lee dealt with it. He called up the mortuary, made arrangements for them to come pick him up, and we were grateful for them. They came when they were supposed to, but we had plenty of time with him. We were so grateful for that. And I remember talking with Lee, and actually it was Lee who suggested this. He said, I think we need to set a time when we give Brannan back to them, because it will be just awful for them to come take him away. And I thought that was a really good idea, that we would make the decision to let him go at that time. We just decided on midnight. And so during the day, we were able to, like I said, see so many people. And Kathy brought Lucy up to see Brannan. And I think she was she just, she didn't know what to think of it. I don't think she knew what to do with Brannan because he wasn't alive. And Kathy snapped a picture of all four of us on the bed, and you've never seen such a sorry lot of people in a picture before. And we let Lucy hold Brannan and touch him. And Kathy told us later that while they were walking out, Lucy turned to Kathy and said, "Well, that was weird." And yeah, it is weird, and it's a real sad time. So like I said, we decided to give Brannan back to the nurses to bring downstairs to the morgue area and at midnight. And so we were just so tired because I'd given birth at 2 a.m. and had not slept because we wanted as much time as possible with Brannan before we had to give him back. And so probably around 10:30 or so, I was like, Lee, I just need to close my eyes. I am so tired. So I slept, and Lee slept too. And I woke up a little while later, and Lee was sitting there talking with his dad. His dad had come up in the middle of the night to be with his grandson before we gave him back. He had held him and kind of rocked him and had his hand on him, and while he was in his bassinet. It was quite sweet and quite tender. Once again, I'm so grateful for my family. They have surrounded us with so much love. And you know what? I totally misspoke. I just realized that a couple of my siblings were not able to be there. I had mentioned that Jules was there, but I completely forgot that she was on a trip in Colombia, and she was trying to get back. So, but I'm so grateful for all those who came to support us. And we walked Brandon around the floor one last time, like normal people do when they, quote unquote, normal people do when they have a baby that's living. They do rounds and walk the baby in the bassinet. That's what we did with Lucy. And so it was just last time before we gave Brandon back, he had a little knitted cap, a crocheted cap from his cousins, Brooke and Paige, a little blue one, and he had a little striped onesie on, a striped white and blue onesie that the hospital had brought for him, because did we have it in our right mind to have anything ready? No, we didn't, and so we didn't have anything. And he was wrapped up in a muslin cloth that our friend Jamie had brought to take pictures with him. And so we're grateful for that. And the nurses were so gracious and kind to say, yes, we will bring these back to you so that you can have them for yourselves for memory's sake. So we got those back and put them in a little plastic bag for a time. And they smelled like him. And I pull those out every so often so I could just smell what he smelled like. When we gave him back, both Lee and I just sobbed and were quite sad. Obviously, we didn't want to see him that way, but we knew it was time to give him up. And so we gave him back and we just crashed and slept. And the next morning was a 24th of July, which is a holiday in Utah. And it was such a quiet day around the hospital and around town. We were supposed to get discharged, but it kept getting delayed because whenever they came to take my blood pressure, I had just had a sobbing session, so my blood pressure was always high. So we finally got discharged later that day and headed home. When we got home, a lot of this is a blur, but I know we got Lucy home with us. Kathy brought her down, and I just remember thinking I was so anxious to see Lucy. I was so worried about her. I was worried for Lucy. Like, I didn't want any more of my children to be lost or taken away, or so. Lucy probably got way more hugs and kisses than she was used to in the coming weeks and months. So, it's July 24th when we get home and we lay low. We had come home and somebody had decorated our door with some colored hearts cut out. And there were gifts on our doorstep of sympathy, and there was an outpouring of love for us, and so many people had wanted to bring over meals, and I'm really grateful for every single person that extended that bit of love and food on our behalf, because we didn't do much those first couple of weeks except for get ready for his funeral. We decided to bury him. We live very close to the cemetery, and so we were excited to be that close to him. And we went to the mortuary, and we had asked Lee's parents to come with us, because even though I have seen a lot of loss in my life, I have not ever been on the end of planning an actual funeral for somebody. I've always just attended funerals, and I'm never old enough to be in charge of it. So we asked them to help. And I will admit that I was a zombie. Lucy was with us and was our entertainment and a little bit of laughter during all of it. But I was just overwhelmed with like, oh, you need to order this. You need to have flowers, and usually these people do this thing. And thankfully, the mortuary we worked with were so kind and so generous with their time and with explaining everything to us. We found out that a family who had lost a couple of grandchildren had created a foundation in which families that have lost a baby or a child, they would pay for part or if not all of a baby casket. So we did not have to worry about that part of the funeral. So, and I remember Lee and I both thinking, gosh, we want to do that if we can help somebody in the future with something like that, because it's such an awful thing to think, oh gosh, I'm going to bring a baby home and we're going to live our life and it's going to be great. I get to raise my child. Instead, you're burying them and all the costs and heartache that goes along with that. Buying a plot at the cemetery and deciding if you want to bury them in a like where babies are buried in the cemetery called Babyland. People call it Babyland because that's where little babies and kids are buried. And we decided that we didn't want him. We wanted to be with him, so we bought plots too. While we were there, we were on the receiving end of so much generosity from Lee's parents and from so many of our friends and neighbors that just wanted to support us in some way during this time. There's too many people to thank, but we're so grateful for them. We decided to have the funeral on a Thursday. My sister Angela from out of state would be able to fly in and be there, and my other sister Jules would be back. Oh, well, she was back pretty quickly afterward. She came she came on the 24th when she did get home and was in the hospital with us, though she didn't get to meet Brannan before he was taken to the morgue. We did invite all of my sisters to help dress Brannan when the time came, but we did get to visit him a couple times in the mortuary beforehand, and of course the first time we looked at him, he didn't have any makeup. He wasn't dressed. He was just in his little blanket, and we were grateful for how good he looked. And Lucy got to hold him again and touch him, and we got to take some pictures with him because that was important to us. And then a few days later, by the time we had to dress him. So my siblings came with me, my sisters came with me, and there was a little white blessing gown and a bonnet that Lee was blessed in when he was a child, and his father was blessed in when he was a child, and so we decided to use that for Brannan's little gown for when he was buried. So we were all together, and it was so nice to be with my sisters, and be able to dress him. It was nice. It was special to feel so close to them and to feel so close to our son. And so we got him dressed and got him ready. And on Thursday, August 2nd, we had a funeral. We invited people to come to the open house. I mean, not the open house, the viewing. We wanted everybody. Once again, we're so proud of him. We're so proud of him. And so we wanted to show him off, and we knew so many people that were rooting for us and for this other baby, and so we wanted them to see him. And it was so great. It was wonderful. We were blessed with how many people came out to see him and to be with us. And we had a close family prayer where those, before we closed the casket, we all tucked in some little letters and tokens into his casket with him. He looked so handsome. He didn't look like himself though. He had makeup on, and um, he just didn't look like himself. And I was a little bummed about that, but that's okay. Like that is, I understand that that's what happens. And so we closed that little casket, and it's just stinks. Then I remember Lee walking out holding the casket as we drove to the cemetery, and so many people joined us at the cemetery. Lee and I had beforehand thought about, gosh, it's going to be August. It's going to be so hot. We should probably put up a couple of pop-up tents, because we knew that there was going to be at least one tent set up by the mortuary and some chairs. But we were like, gosh, it's going to be so hot. We should put up some tents and put out some water for people. But when we got to the cemetery, it was overcast, and once our service started, it started to rain. And so people did gather underneath umbrellas and underneath the tents. And we had some wonderful talks. Kathy spoke about life after this life, and I'm so grateful for that. And Lee's dad spoke also, and it was so touching. And Lee also spoke, and I remember something that Lee said. He said, "I cannot do anything more for my son because he is. You wish the best for your children, and he is. He has the best now, and what an effort's going to be to make sure that we are able to see him again and qualify to see him again." And our Lee's sister and brother-in-law played a couple of beautiful, beautiful pieces for us, and I'm so grateful for the spirit that we felt, the love and the love we were surrounded with. It was a beautiful service, and once again, so many people came out to support us and to support Brannan. It was a beautiful day. We met up after for a little family luncheon, and I'm grateful once again for the outpouring of love, to see all of our family too, and friends, to be with them. We could not have survived without them, emotionally and spiritually supporting us through this all, because it has been a couple of really rough years where we're doing okay sometimes, and other times it's not so great. We had an autopsy done. We had a partial autopsy done, rather, and I'm grateful for the nurse who talked us through what some of the options were, and we didn't want to have, because I was so unaware of what was entailed in autopsies. But we wanted to see if we could find out what had happened to Brannan. So we wanted to have an autopsy done of the placenta, if we could, as well as of do a visual inspection of Brannan himself, without any cutting into him. And so it does, cutting into your baby's little body seems extremely invasive, and so we just had this partial autopsy. What came back from that autopsy, and it took a while for it to come back, was that he looked great. I found out that he has blue eyes, just like Lucy when she was born, just like Lee. Yeah, everything looks good on him. My placenta had something called circumvallate insertion. I think it's circumvallate placenta, which means that sometimes when the placenta attaches to the uterine wall, it kind of folds over on itself. So it's like a sticker that's folded over on itself, so it's not completely attached. And our doctor thought maybe it had not been caught because it had only been half of it, and so it probably wasn't caught on the ultrasound. And so he thought maybe when I was having some contractions earlier that it had just sheared off and cut off nutrition and to Brannan, and he passed away. Obviously, that is not a definitive, but he was thinking that that might be the case. So, but yeah, that's my story of Brannan. I think about him all the time, and I'm sad that he didn't get to experience this life, because this life is pretty great. Obviously, there's ups and downs, but it's pretty amazing. I'm sad that Lucy won't necessarily know him right away, but I believe that he is watching over us, and I believe that we will see him again. Lastly, I do want to say that I'm grateful for Brannan and that he has taught me so much, and he has given me a new outlook on life. I feel like he has saved me in the sense that it kind of woke me up to things that I was not paying attention to and not sharing my love with, and I'm so grateful for him. I'm grateful that he is my son. I'm grateful that he has brought our family so close together, and I'm just so excited to meet him one day and to be his mom. Well, I guess I am his mom, but to be his mom and to take care of him. So yeah, that's Brannan. I love him very, very much. Thanks again for joining us today on this episode. I'm so grateful that I could share Brannan's story with you. I sure do love him, and I'm sure glad for this community that is so supportive and uplifting despite this tragedy, this common tragedy we share. Please share this podcast with others that may need it, because our community needs each other. You can head over to our website, stillapartofus.com, for more information about sharing your story or getting in touch with us. The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Redd. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, She Dreams in Blue. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.